Well, welcome. Tonight, we're going to meet 4 people who my hat is tipped to. I've tipped my cap to everybody who's willing to stand up and help our town get better and help our kids fulfill their ultimate destiny of being leaders. School committee, I've said all the time, to me is so special because anybody who's been a parent, by the time kids get to high school, you're lucky if you can get an hour or 2 a day out of them where you're together with them. These people that you're going to meet, 2 of them will chart 6 to 8 hours a day of what our children are doing and have a really fundamentally important impact on their lives. So the first thing is thank you to all of you for getting up and saying you're willing to help. And now let's start with introductions.
My name is Jim Legore. Al, thank you for having me on the show.
Thanks for having me as well. Al, my name is Joe Marias, and running for re-election on the school committee.
Thank you, Al, for having me. Name's Scott Vecchiola, born and raised.
I will hold off saying thank you maybe till the end.
But you can give me your name in case somebody doesn't know you.
Thank you. My name is Mike Visconti. I am happy to be here. I should.
You all have been here before, but you know I start every show like this with the same question that I'll end with. Yeah. So Jim, you won the 4-headed coin toss. So Jim, I'm from Milford. Why should I vote for you?
So thanks again. The last time I was on the show, we started and ended with the same question, and my answer still remains the same. I've got 10 years of public service on the personnel board as a member and chairman. I've got 2 sons in the school district now, and I'm looking for an opportunity to continue to give back to the town.
Joe, I'm from Milford. Why should I vote for you?
Yeah, so this is an exciting time for the Milford Public Schools. We're seeing some very positive momentum, and there are a number of changes going to be coming up that are going to have a long-term impact not only on our schools but on the community as a whole. So we're transitioning the leadership, where the new Woodland School is coming online. We're going to be transitioning grades among 3 different schools. We're going to start the long-range planning process. And I think having the experience that I've built over the past 3 years and the relationships that I've built could be very valuable going forward.
Scott, I'm from Milford. Why should I vote for you?
Well, I've been on Vernon Grove for 6 years, chairman right now, town meeting member. I believe that experience helps me be a vital candidate to be on the school system as they're pushing for the future, with Woodland coming on. Then you gotta look at the middle school east, possibly down the road, the high school getting a remodel. That'd be the best candidate. Thank you.
Michael, I'm from Milford. Why should I vote for you?
You should vote for me because I am a dedicated Milfordian. I believe I have exemplified that by the fact that I have been an active town meeting member for closing in on 40 years now. And the key word is active. I don't just become a town meeting member to say, oh, I'm a town meeting member. I am an active participant in town meeting, and I have been for the last 35 plus years. I also served for 20 years on the Zoning Board of Appeals, and I will say that in both of those capacities, I have had a perfect attendance record, with the exception of the Zoning Board, when in my 18th year, I believe it was my 18th year, because of a significant health issue, I missed several meetings. When I resolved that health issue enough so I could continue, I then continued to end out my tenure on the zoning board with a perfect attendance record. My attendance at town meeting has been perfect for the last 35 plus years. And I take pride in that because I don't want to say that I'm a town meeting member if I'm not an active participant in the town meeting. And I have been, and I plan on being a very active participant if I am elected to the school committee. Because I don't care how good you are, if you don't show up, as far as I'm concerned, you're no good.
And you hit on being a real Milfordian. I think we established it at the last show with the selectmen where I said, I told my daughter she's finally a real Milfordian. She was 4th generation Milford, and she lives within 2 miles of her mother. So, okay. Jim, you got the first question.
Yes, sir.
What do you think are the biggest challenges the school committee will face?
So, in my opinion on that, school choice is a major issue. I have said repeatedly that I believe that we have a messaging issue to the community. And I think standardized testing is another issue that will be huge. And I will add a fourth to that, IT. I think technology is going to be a considerable discussion point moving forward.
You've got a minute. How would you address it?
We've talked extensively about messaging. I think the school system should look at targeted messaging for academics, athletics, and enrichment. I think that ties in with the school choice numbers that we're seeing. I think that we have an opportunity to communicate the good things that the district is doing. I know that there are different concerns from different parent groups as to whether or not their child is seeing academic enrichment or athletic excellence. I think those two go hand in hand. There's an opportunity to look at the district's IT infrastructure as to whether or not we'd want to look at a traditional hardware configuration, the cost of ownership associated with that versus the cost of ownership associated with a cloud-based solution. As I mentioned in one of our last discussions, there are case studies out there where schools are migrating to cloud-based environments. I think there's a total cost of ownership model that is significantly different than the traditional hardware model. From a standardized testing perspective, I think the district does a great job. I think we need to look more into how we fundamentally set up standardized testing, whether or not it really sends the message to the community as to how the district is doing. I think that statistically, I think you can move numbers around in different directions to say different things. The last time we were on the show, we talked about bimodal statistics. You used the example of Tom Davern. I think that's a great example, and I'll recycle that here. To Tom's example, you take the top 10 students from this district, you can benchmark them against the top 10 students in the surrounding districts, and I think that you'll see that we are either on par or above.
Joe, biggest challenges facing the school committee, and I know you probably won't say too much money and not enough ways to spend it.
That's right. I definitely won't say that. There are a few things. Jim obviously touched on a couple there. One thing that we're hearing from a number of different sources, from the Metro West Health Survey, from students, from parents, from teachers, is that our children, our students are dealing with a lot of social and emotional issues today. And obviously we want our kids to feel safe, and we want them to make good choices. And so we want to make sure we have all the programs in place to address the basic things that you would think of, the drugs, the alcohol, the bullying, but we also want to take that a step further and offer programs that help our children deal with managing their emotions, building relationships, conflict resolution, teaching them how to be resilient in dealing with issues and how to overcome challenges. And I know that's an area of focus for Kevin. That's something that he's been talking a lot about, and finding different ways to introduce some of those programs and services directly into the curriculum.
Our new superintendent.
Our new superintendent, exactly, Dr. McIntyre. So that's one. The other that Jim touched on is the school choice issue. Obviously we have more students that are leaving the district than are coming in, and as Jim pointed out, a lot of that is a perception issue where I don't think parents and some students understand just what we have to offer in the Milford School District. And so the administration has taken some steps to better market the schools. And unfortunately, the world's much different today than it was when we were kids, right? When we were kids, if you lived in Milford, you went to Milford schools, you wouldn't consider going to another community. There may be a handful of kids that might have gone to a private school, but for the most part, you went to Milford High School. Now the dynamic has changed dramatically where parents, you're competing with local towns. So you really need to market yourself to the community. And we've done that to some extent with some work at Middle School East. And Peter Boucher, the athletic director, is doing a lot from an athletic perspective to engage some of the younger students and encourage them to come up and stay at Milford High School. But there's more that we can do there. And we really need to formalize that marketing plan and come up with a marketing calendar and a strategy to really promote all the great programs and services that we have to offer in the schools. So social and emotional issues, the school choice issues, and then the funding that you touched on earlier. It's, that's a challenge that communities are facing throughout the state and throughout the country. There's clearly a lack of funding for public education, and we need to make sure that that's a priority at the local level and at the state level. And in Milford, we've been very fortunate, as you know, that Milford is strong financially, and they've always been able to step in and sort of fill that gap when there has been a reduction in aid at the state level, and that has allowed us to provide our kids or meet our kids' needs, but that's something we need to continue to advocate for.
Scott?
Well, probably the main one is school choice. Because I've been seeing a lot of kids. I had a meeting the other night. It was pretty productive. Bullying's probably one of the top projects in that. And they're probably under a lot of stress, the kids today, because they got all the MCAS and all those tests they got to do today, like we didn't have them back then. Number two, the new superintendent transition. He's actually got a new leader, even though he's up there, but you get a new leader. That'd probably be the second one. Third, Middle School East. See what you're going to do with that. Because that's going to cost either way, money-wise.
Okay, Michael?
Well,
What do you see as the three?
since school choice seems to be the hot topic, which it should be, we are losing students to other districts. And we need to find out why we're losing them, and we need to do something to make them stay here and to bring more, we need more choice in students. One of the things we need to do is to get a handle on why the students are leaving. Now, I believe that there was or is in place what I'll call a cursory survey that gone out to the students who left, or the families of the students who left the system. But I believe the survey has to be a little more complex. And when I say complex, not complex in the sense that it's a hard survey to respond to, but complex in the sense that it covers all the bases. Now, I have been communicating with the gentleman who handled the survey for the Weston schools. Weston was in the same situation we are in, where they were losing students to other districts. This gentleman his company develops comprehensive surveys that are, while they are comprehensive, they are very easily responded to. They are an online survey, so you do not have to worry about who do we send it to, where does it go. It's an online survey that you ask blanketly the students families who left to please fill out this survey. The results are compiled objectively. There is no emotion involved. The numbers are dispassionate. There's no emotion involved. It's not people who feel that the system is a great system compiling and publishing the results, which can be a problem. One of the things we need to do, I can see right off the top, is make our school systems more attractive to other towns. I can tell you this, when I was growing up, it was not even an issue, as some of the candidates have said, as to where you went to school. You went to school in your town. Now we know that's not the case. If I was going to school today, or if I had a child who was going to school today, one of the things that would strike me is, wait a minute, Milford is ranked, Milford High School is ranked number 131, not even in the top 100. We need to do something to get Milford down at least into the top 100. We're competing with schools, surrounding schools, Holliston, Hopkinton, Franklin, Medway, Millis. They're all down well below the 100 mark in terms of their ranking. Now, these rankings are compiled by Niche, which is a company that is considered the foremost ranking system of schools in the country. So we know the results are fairly accurate. They have no interest in our school or in any school. They are objective participants in ranking. Their methodology is very complex in how they come up with the final numbers. It takes into consideration a myriad of things, everything from student-teacher ratio to how many students go off to college, how many students go off to career opportunities. They take in a lot, it's a very complex methodology, and everybody is treated fairly. So we need to find out why
So
and
school
how.
choice would be your first. What would be your second? What do you think would be the second biggest challenge?
I think a big challenge we have in the school system is maintenance. And that might be low on some other people's priorities, but maintenance is an issue. We have a habit in this town of building architectural monuments and then doing nothing in terms of preventive maintenance. And then we wake up one day and say, oh, that school, that building, that structure is falling apart. We need to replace it to the tune of $34 million of taxpayers' money. We have a brand-new school up there. Taxpayers, you know, the total was around 60 mil. Cost the taxpayers, round numbers, 34, 35 million. We need to maintain that building on a regular basis. So 15 years from now, we're not sitting here saying we need a new school and the cost is going to be 70 million. We need to be certain and ensure that our schools and all our public buildings, for that matter, are being maintained on a routine, regular basis.
Now, speaking of maintenance, something that's near and dear to everybody's heart is technology. Because the days are gone when you said you had 2 or 3 fields that needed to be on the cutting edge of technology. Today, I don't know of any position that doesn't use technology. Joe, what's your assessment of the technology in the schools, and where would you like to see it go, and how?
Yeah, so there's still some work to be done there, but we have made some progress over the past year or so. They completed a very detailed mapping assessment, so we know exactly where all the holes are across the district. We installed the fiber loop, so connectivity is much stronger today than it was just a few months ago. Teachers are actually able to use the
My
the
daughter
internet.
says she can use the applications
Right,
now.
it's fantastic,
Yeah.
isn't it? We started a pilot, the Chromebooks, with a number of different teachers, and that's been very successful so far. We have an organizational chart for that department going forward. We have a job description in place for the Director of Instructional Technology. So that's going to be the next big step, is getting that person in place. Because once that person's in place, they're going to start to drive the vision for technology going forward. And a big piece of that will be rolling out the actual hardware and making sure the infrastructure is in place to be able to support it. But the other big piece to it is the professional development. So you need to make sure that the teachers are properly trained and they know how to use this technology efficiently in the classroom to really maximize the benefit of it. So I think we're making some progress, but the big thing at this point is getting that Director of Instructional Technology in place so that we can then continue to move forward. And with Woodland coming online this fall, they're going to be fully equipped. Obviously, it's going to be a state-of-the-art facility. We're going to have enough Chromebooks in there to be able to offer a one-on-one initiative. But we need to make sure that once those kids transition from Woodland over to Stacy, that there's no degradation in
Yeah, they
their-
can't just fall off and you get your
Exactly.
stone tablets at Stacy and
Right, right. So there's still a lot of work to do there, but I feel comfortable with the plan that's been put in place. I feel very comfortable with our service provider, with World Band. You know, from my perspective, I think you need to outsource a lot of those functions just because you're going to get a much broader skill set as opposed to hiring your own staff. And you also have a lot more accessibility as well. You have service basically 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, as opposed to having your own staff. So again, some work to do there. There'll be some growing pains. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I mean, it's when you a project this big, you know, there are going to be some bumps in the road, but I feel confident in the plan that's in place today.
Final question, how do we pay for all this?
Well, fortunately, we've worked very closely with the FinCom and with the town, and we have a separate budget line item for technology, and we've already deposited some funds in there that are allocated specifically for the schools, so we have complete access to those funds, and we're able to use that money to move forward with.
And the E-rate's helping a little bit.
The E-rate is helping immensely. Absolutely. I think the reimbursement rate is 66, 67%, I think.
Right, we pay a third.
Right. So that's helping tremendously. So the cost of the town is going to be very reasonable as a result of that. And there's Fortunately, there's a lot of grant money out there today for technology because everyone wants to ensure that technology gets in the classroom, right? So you have the states that are willing to support it, you have the federal government that's willing to support it, but you also have private industry that wants to support it as well. So that's one of the things that whoever we bring in as that instructor of technology needs to have a good grasp of the E-rate process and a good grasp of the different funding mechanisms that are available out there so we can maximize that.
Yeah, I mean, this year alone, if we get approved, the 300,000 we're putting in is going to turn into $900,000 of hardware.
Right.
Scott, technology in the schools, where are we? Where do you think we should be, and how do we get there?
I believe they're coming a long way. Everything takes time. I can agree with Joe. Outsourcing some probably is a good way too, because we're open and they do a good job. Everything costs money. I think the best thing is when they broke off with the town, have two separate, it shouldn't be one person running the whole town, schools and the town. I think it'd be better in the long run. And down the road, maybe get the two IT directors to work together on some new ideas.
Michael, where are we? Where should we be, and how do we get there in technology?
6 years ago, I made a statement when I was a candidate for selectman that technology was not only catching up with us, but it was passing us by very quickly, and we needed to do something on an immediate basis. Here we have another situation where we cannot sit back and do nothing and then wake up one day and say, we need everything now. We need to maintain it and keep up with the times. And that doesn't necessarily mean spend a lot of money. That means plan and expedite efficiently so that we can keep up reasonably with technology and still stay within the budget. Staying within the budget is very important. I believe that, as I've said before, the departments should be separate. The general town should be separate from the school system. They have completely different operations, and they should be handled separately. I also believe that there should not be an IT department, if you will. By department, I mean we don't need more people. We need one director, and everything else should be outsourced. We operate far more efficiently that way. We do not burden the taxpayers with tremendous increase in salaries, not only on an immediate basis, but for the life of that employee with benefits forever. The only way to do it is to hire a competent IT director and then outsource from that point on.
Thank you. Jim, IT, technology, where are we, where should we be, and how do we get there?
Actually, I agree with a lot of the panel. Particularly, Joe has a very intimate knowledge of what's going on at this time, and I agree. I also agree in the outsource model. It has a lot of merit, reduces total cost of ownership, reduces spend, increases service level arrangements. I'll give you just one example. I spoke to Kevin last night after the homework forum, and I did have a question regarding, is there a way we can expand the online portal to include homework so that I can monitor what my child is doing, for homework? Not that I'm gonna stay on top of them that way, but it would be a great way to identify what they have for deliverables every night.
So you don't have to jump in the backpack and...
Right, well, that's a tactical end of it. So unfortunately, the family portal doesn't have the bandwidth and the capacity to, expand to that level. So we ended up having an expanded conversation, which led to the, to implementation of Google Classroom as part of the roadmap. So I agree with a lot of what Joe said. The school committee is doing, we have a good insight, a good roadmap, what they're following. There's funding available, there's subsidy available. The question or the charter is, how do we continue to develop technology over time? How do we implement it into the curriculum? And how does the district benefit from that overall? I actually agree with Mike as well. I think we should have a dedicated IT professional for the town. I think we should have a dedicated IT professional for the district. I don't know if you get away from having some boots on the ground with the traditional hardware infrastructure. I think you are still going to have one or two people on staff that are going to be able to take service calls and deal with blackouts and et cetera. But for the most part, the outsource model, I think, is the way to go as well, because I do believe overall it reduces total cost of ownership and gives you the best bang for the buck.
And how do we pay for all of it?
Well, I mean, there's appropriation, there's subsidy. I think that, as Joe said, we continue to ask the Finance Committee for line item advances. But, I mean, clearly there's a cost benefit to it, and the district has to be brought up to a certain level. It has been a while, to Mike's point. The district and the town really haven't been keeping up on IT spending the way they should have. The unfortunate part of that is that you're going to have to spend a lot to get to where you need to be at this point.
Well, hopefully 900,000 this year is enough to catch us up for a while.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, I think the roadmap has been defined. The budget has been assigned to that roadmap. I think we're on track. The question becomes, what do you allocate in the future? What are the district's needs moving forward? So I think that's a year-to-year discussion,
Sure.
And I'm sure that we're prepared to do that.
Scott, there's a lot of opinion, confusion about the effect of the immigrant population on our schools. Your thoughts?
I hear it every day, too, but honestly, they're kids. I'm not gonna tell the kids you can't leave. We have to take care of the kids. That's the rule of the law. Population-wise, yeah, there's a lot of them here, but hey, they come here. Everybody came here. We did, our parents and stuff. It costs money. They have to give us more money funding. Fund the kids, I believe.
They who?
State, federal. I believe they got it now. Joe probably can echo it better.
Okay. Michael,
Well,
thoughts on the immigration, the effect of immigrants in our school system?
as I have told you in the past, we cannot keep using immigration as an excuse for not turning out students that are proficient in reading, writing, and math, and the basics, if you will. We need to make our students proficient in reading, writing, and arithmetic, if you will. And if we do that, then they will, whether they go on to college or whether they seek career opportunities that do not require a college education, if we teach them and make them proficient in the basics, they will flow much more easily into college or career opportunities. We need to leave vocation classes to the vocational schools, and we need to get back to the basics, and that's what I am in favor of.
Jim?
So Mike and Scott touched on some great points. I think the reality is, look, we have a solid curriculum in the district. Some of the statistics we talked about last time, if you look at our 5-year cohort average, it's 94%. We have a mid-90s college acceptance rate. We have kids going to D1, D2 schools. I think when the immigration issue for the town reflects onto the district. I mean, it transcends just talking about school. The town itself has an issue that it needs to, come to grasp with. However, I think what happens is, you get children from very different parts of the world that have varying degrees of educational background. They come to Massachusetts, and rightly so. We educate everybody that comes into the town. That's our job. It's a give us your tired, you're hungry, you're poor environment. However, statistically speaking, when you take kids with varying educational backgrounds, you put them in standardized test environments, you get varying results. And I think what ends up happening is that over time, you'll notice peaks and valleys in your performance metrics because, you have an ELL or an ESL percentage, There's budget to put, ELL teachers and aides in the classroom, but I still think that that's only one piece of the pie. Being able to communicate with someone and being able to impart the curriculum are two different things. So I think it is very challenging. You certainly can't move to more of an inclusion environment. They have to stay in more of a general population type of setting. So I think it is challenging in order to continue to maintain your current curriculum while you're trying to raise the bar in other areas. The only way I think you can continue to be successful at that is you're going to have to take it, in a boots on the ground approach, which we are doing. There's a lot of involvement in the classroom. I think considering the fact that we have a pretty healthy percentage, of ELL population, our overall testing statistics are actually pretty good. But I think that, as we talked about last time with the Tom Davern approach, if you remove that percentage from the overall statistic, I think you would notice that, that by and large, the school is on point.
I'm smiling because I'm going to ask you this question. Did you ever think, if my grandfather, who came to Milford, ever could, as he looks down on us and says, you got a Correa asking a Moraes in an abstract way,
Right.
What do you think the immigrant population effect is? It's pretty, I got to smile.
Right.
Because somewhere up there he must be chuckling.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'll be honest with you, it saddens me when I hear some of the debate that's happening out there publicly. Milford has always been a diverse community, and as we talked about before, both my parents immigrated here when they were teenagers, and I was an ELL student through the third grade, so I know how important these programs and these services are to
Yeah, but at least
our
they knew.
kids.
We didn't know. I was an ELL student when I stepped out of my house, and all of a sudden you said, what are they talking? They're
Right.
speaking some kind of strange language that I've never heard before. Sorry.
Right. No, it's true. And when you talk to these families today, and you talk to the students, and it's familiar stories. It's the stories that we heard from our parents, from our grandparents, stories of sacrifice, stories of hope. And not only do we have a legal obligation to educate every child in the schools, it's morally the right thing to do. And it's frustrating when you hear some of the controversy surrounding this, because there really shouldn't be any controversy whatsoever. And fortunately, we have an unbelievable staff in place, and Jen Lancaster is the director of the program, and she's one of the most passionate advocates that you're going to speak to regarding the ELL population. And we made an investment over the past 2 years to make sure that we're providing those kids with the resources they need, and providing the staff with the resources they need to be successful. So, I don't see them creating a challenge for us, because we have a highly skilled staff in place to be able to handle the ELL population. What does create a challenge is the rate at which the population has increased. So the population has doubled within the past 5 years. It's gone from 250 students to 500 students. Now, to put that in perspective, we have 4,300 students in the district, right? So that's still only 12% of our population. It's not, the percentage that a lot of people out there publicly think. But that rate increase creates a challenge. And I know last year John Fernandez had written some legislation to try and help with the number of students that come in during the year, because we're not getting funding for those students until the following year. So he was hoping to create some sort of circuit breaker so the funding would kick in immediately once the child entered the district. And I'd have to research where that stands. Obviously, it hasn't been passed yet, but something like that would certainly help communities like Milford. And then in addition to that, what would be helpful is if the governor and the legislature decides to adopt some of the recommendations that the Foundational Budget Review Commission put in place. One of the recommendations was to increase the allocation for ELL students. Today, there's a different allocation depending upon how old the child is. And one of the proposals is to go with the highest rate across the board. So that would be very helpful to a community like ours.
I think everybody's had their say. So now, Michael, recent school committee discussion was about the need to raise salaries of all of our aides, or some of our aides, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 to maintain them. Your thoughts?
I believe that everybody, whether they're staff or administration, should be compensated fairly. Now, by fairly, I mean fairly for them and fairly for the taxpayers. It works both ways. I really don't know enough about what the aides do, what the education requirements are, how much time they put in to answer that question at this point. I would need to delve into it a little more deeply and see exactly what their job description is, what they do, what were their education requirements, and how valuable are they to the system before I can answer that intelligently. On the surface, it seems like an exorbitant amount of money for an increase. But like I say, that's on the surface. I would have to get into it a little more deeply to really give you an intelligent answer.
Okay, Jim?
The last time we talked about that, I mean, I am actually very pro talent retention. So, you know, having been on the being on the personnel board, we are knee deep in a salary compensation program right now. So I can tell you that, you know, unless you're going to go out and really benchmark those positions in the marketplace and do due diligence, if you're seeing an overabundance amount of attrition, then it is time to talk about, you know, I think you can get some type of a barometer approach if you're losing people at a clip for better salaries. I think it's time to talk about maybe raising the bar a little bit. I actually, like I said,
Is 15, 20 grand a little bit?
well, I guess, again, it depends on where the market point is. Is that a midpoint increase? Is that a low point
Don't
increase?
know.
I mean, we don't know. So, and I don't know either, so I can't really make a decision. But I will say that, you know, without knowing you know, where we are and where they want to be and where the market is actually paying, a little bit to Mike's point is where is a fair market value for that? However, with that being said, I actually am in favor of talent retention. So if you do have, you know, if you do have a strong team, I believe in you know, in compensation to retain that team. So I would be in favor of addressing, you know, where we are for a gap, how do we get there, and do we have the money to get there?
Joe?
Yeah, and that number is a little overblown. So what we're looking to do is actually increase the salaries for behavioral assistants from $13 an hour to $15 an hour this year. So it's a $2 an hour increase, which amounts to maybe $2,400 to $3,000 per year. And the reason we're looking into that is that we have seen a lot of attrition, and we're spending a lot of money to train these behavioral assistants who are working with our students that have the greatest need. And what we're finding is we're spending the money to train them, and then we're finding they're leaving to go to a neighboring town for much more money. And so not only are we wasting money on the training, but that's having a negative impact on the child as well, who can't necessarily handle the turnover and the change. So,
But that's a small population. I mean, the word got out
Right.
on the street that it's 15 to 20 grand for every aide.
No, so it didn't include the teacher's aides, the teacher aides who are part of the contract. So this is just the behavioral assistants who are not part of the contract, who are looking to make some adjustments so that the salary is a little bit more competitive.
Scott?
Well, if the money's there, you gotta save the aides from going from other places, because a lot of schools are offering more money to go work there. That's how a lot of teachers are leaving, and aides. I'd be for it. You gotta pay them. If you wanna keep good aides and teachers here, you gotta pay them.
Jim, what do you think of the best programs in the school system?
From an academic perspective, or just overall?
From a child's perspective.
Um,
Because you've brought out that it's not academics, it's just not athletics. But from the child's perspective, from the parent's perspective.
Well, again, I think we see, in my dialogue, I end up having conversations regarding Milford academics, particularly within the math and science areas. And again, it comes down to, you know, Mike mentioned that the school is rated at 131 out of, you know, in the state. You know, those dialogues end up becoming prevalent because people read that. They look at the test scores, they see that there's, you know, an 86% proficiency rating for math and science. In English, But to answer your question, I mean, I believe that in my opinion, math and science are probably the two biggest fundamental programs within the district. I think from a child's perspective, I know from my own kids that, you know, when you look at how they embrace the curriculum from, you know, just using my two as an example, from 15 and 11, they both were drawn to math and science. So we've had a very good foundation of math and science teachers in the district. I know that, you know, Joshua has, he's in high school now, so he has a much broader teacher base, but Jacob, who is still 11, you know, Dr. Gilman was a favorite of both of them. So I think those two areas really do, you know, peak and hold a child's interest in terms of, you know, which subject matter would probably be prevalent. But then again, I can't help but to also emphasize the impact of athletics on the district as well.
Joe, what's the most successful programs in your mind?
Yeah, well, I think when I look at our district, one of the things that I'm most proud of is the focus on the whole child. When you look at the diverse offering of programs and services that we have across the school district, you know, I would put us up against any other neighboring community. Our kids have so much to choose from, whether it's athletics, music, art, or academics. There's so much that we offer, and at the end of the day, it's really up to that individual student to make the most of that opportunity that they have in front of them. In terms of, you know, the most successful programs, you know, I take a lot of pride in the number of AP programs that we offer at the high school. I've been very impressed with the hospitality program that Bob introduced a couple years ago. You know, that was very innovative of him to consider a program like a vocational program like that in a comprehensive high school model, and I think that's going to pave the way for additional programs going forward to help meet that need. Because as you know, so many kids are looking at Blackstone Valley Tech as an option for high school because they want that hands-on experience. So if there's some way to replicate that by offering complementary programs in our schools, that's something that we should definitely look at exploring.
Scott?
Well, community use is one of them. That's a good one. Probably the athletics. A lot of kids use that. That's a great one. Music, and that's another good one. Those top three.
Michael?
Well, I'm going to go back to the 3 R's, if you will, okay? We need to make our students proficient in reading, writing, and arithmetic. If we do that, if we can make them, teach them to be proficient in the basics, then as I said, they will be able to flow very easily into career opportunities. When they go to apply to get a job at a hotel, for example, if they can read and write and add 2 and 2, they will be one up on the person sitting next to them. We need to bring their scores up. Each year, the College Boards sets a benchmark score for what they feel a student should reach to be ready for a college or career opportunity. Now that benchmark, for the past 2 years, has not been met in the Milford schools. Because we need to improve reading, writing, and math skills. We talked a little bit about school choice before. Why are our students going to other schools? Well, that benchmark score, if you will. Medway murdered that benchmark, okay? Millis creamed the benchmark. Franklin destroyed the benchmark. Hopkinton buried the benchmark. All of these surrounding schools are turning out students that are far more proficient in reading, writing, and math skills than we are. We need to work to improve those basic skills. Not just so our students can go off to college, because as I said, if you can read and you can write and you can add 2 and 2, then you can far more easily move into other career opportunities, such as working at a hotel.
Okay, quick round.
Leave the vocational classes to the vocational schools. Get back to the basics.
Joe,
Thank you.
2 minutes. Image of Milford test scores is that they're substandard. Your thoughts?
I think the test scores can be very misleading, and they're just one measure that don't define how well a district is doing in educating our children. You need to look at a much broader picture. You know, and when you look at the averages for Milford, if you look at the average ELA score, English language arts, we're above the state average there. In math, we had some mixed results. But if you were to break down those scores and look at the underlying demographics, you know, I would put our high-achieving students up against the high-achieving students in Hopkinton, Holliston, Medway, Franklin, all these communities, and you'd find that our scores are going to be very competitive. I would take our average students and benchmark them against those communities as well, and you're going to find our scores are very competitive. Our ELL students, same thing. Our special ed students, same thing. If you just look at the average, our scores are going to be a little bit lower because of the underlying demographics. So I mentioned earlier 12% of the population is ELL, 15% of the population is special education, and then another 27% of the population is low income. So they're going to drive your scores down on a relative basis. But when you break it down, you look at it by demographic, our scores are going to be very competitive.
Scotty, 2 minutes.
It always should be better. We gotta look at the big picture. A lot of it, the ELL, the special ed, those make it go down. It happens. You know, it could get better. It takes time in a lot of ways. Some people want to rush things. You gotta give them time to learn, and they make you proud at the end.
Michael, 2 minutes on our test scores.
Okay. To Mr. Marias' point, if I will, we cannot judge success based on extremes. Yes, certainly there are going to be some high-performing students, no doubt about it. But we can't base our conclusions on extremes. We have to look at averages, to be fair. And if you consider that most of the students that take the college boards are students that are they are successful students that are planning on going to college. They are not your low-achieving students. So those low achievers do not affect the end scores. These scores are the scores of the students that are achievers that are planning on going to college. And Milford right now is not turning out students of the caliber that the surrounding towns are. I mentioned before that back in the day, there was no question. If you lived in Milford, you went to Milford schools. My son, I sent him to Milford schools. I never even thought about sending him somewhere else.
Okay, I'm going to have to cut you off.
If we were talking about it today, I would say, wait a minute, maybe I want to send him to Hopkinton,
Okay.
down the street,
I got to
turning out
cut
a
you off
better
because we're
student.
running out of time. 2 minutes.
No, I just want to echo what Joe said. I mean, that is basically the point. If you strip out the kids that are high performance and mid performance, you'll see that there's continuum in the benchmark across surrounding areas. And then to echo what he said again, you know, when you factor in the ELL percentage, I mean, you know, if you really want to do a true best benchmark, look at the ELL percentage in the surrounding towns. So again, I mean, we don't have the ability to cherry pick the kids that come to the school. Neither do the surrounding towns, but they don't share the same demographic. So I think it's an unfair perception, and it's one of the reasons why I, you know, like the school committee, I'm in favor of sharing the positive statistics so people can get a true sense of what the curriculum in the district are doing.
2 minutes each. Michael, I'm from Milford. In 2 minutes, tell me why I should vote for you.
Well, we have not talked about this to this extent, but just getting back to IT for 1 second. If this past year the school committee has been heavily criticized for their lackluster approach and foot dragging with respect to deciding how they are going to proceed with the IT. Now, this had a detrimental effect on our selectmen being able to decide how they wanted to proceed. I am an expediter. If I am elected to the school committee, I hope that I can help the school committee expedite decisions of that type when they occur. I have no children in the system. I know a lot of candidates in the past have used that as a talking point as an advantage for them being on the school committee. I look at it a little differently. Having no children in the system, all of my voting decisions will be completely objective, without regard for how it may positively or negatively affect my child in the system, because I don't have a child in the system. So I believe that is a strong point for myself.
2 minutes, Scott.
Well, I'll be honest with everybody. I'm born and raised here. I lived here all my life, so being on the current board of Vernon Grove, I think that would help me. And I would love to help them get school choice back where it should be. Keep the kids here and teach them, not push them out. Like a lot of them get pushed too much with the bullying and everything else going on. And I'd be honest and fair on every decision.
Joe, I'm from Milford. Why should I vote for you?
Yeah, well, like the other candidates here, I'm born and raised in Milford as well, and I care a lot about this community. I do have a daughter that's in the school system. She's in the 5th grade, and you know, I will continue to be a very strong advocate for education in the community. I really think it's critical. You know, if you have a strong school, that's going to help the community over the long term. The immediate benefit of making that investment into the schools is for the student, but the long-term benefit is for the community as a whole. So I'll continue to be a strong advocate for education, and I think, as I mentioned earlier, the 3 years that I spent on the committee, I'm the vice chairman this year. I've served on the policy committee for 2 years. I've been on other subcommittees as well, negotiated a contract. So I've built a lot of experience over the past 3 years that I think would be helpful going forward.
Jim, why should I vote for you?
Well, again, very similar to the other candidates. I am a born and raised resident of Milford. I do have 2 children in the system, and I am very serious about trying to improve the image of the district. So I'm really, my platform is really more about trying to get the word out regarding the good things that the curriculum is doing, that the school committee is doing, that the district as a whole is doing. And I do think that, you know, my time on the personnel board, my time at town meeting, and my involvement in the town, you know, really makes me, gives me a number of different perspectives that I can also bring to the table.
And as always, as we come to the end of the program, we should all thank all of these candidates for getting up and saying they're willing to put in time, energy, and everything else that goes along with putting up with old people like me that criticize them and challenge them. But in all fairness, the school committee does one heck of a job. We talk about judging our kids. The real judge were the colleges and the employers. And I was really proud to say my daughters got into every school they applied to. That, to me, tells me that we're not doing too bad. If they can apply to some of the top schools in the area and the schools have accepted them, that they don't look at Milford as too bad of a place to come from. So I want to thank the school committee in general, and even the people now, because 2 out of 4 will be on the school committee going forward, but the people who've tried in the past, because we really do need people to stand up and help our kids. So thank you to all of you for not only what you're about to do, but everything you've done up till now. And for tonight, I won't ask you to vote for any specific candidate, but I will beg you to vote. And I'll ask you to get to know these candidates. There's a number of forums. There's a number of one-on-one interviews. We'll get them up on YouTube during the month of March, so you can, I don't think anybody wants to watch fat old man like me for 58 minutes, but you can get up and watch parts of it to get a good feeling for each of the candidates. Obviously, tonight's show will be up on YouTube, so you can look at how they respond to questions. And all the questions were given ahead of time, so there are no surprises. And as always, may God bless, and may tomorrow at the center of the universe be a little better than tonight. Thank you to our 6 loyal viewers for joining us. Good night, and thank you.
Thank you, Al.
too long since I've been